Yeah. Anyone else? Ariel, you came off mute. You something to add?
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah.
Okay. Just to kind of just expounding on what Lionel was saying a second ago. I don't think that it's. I feel like improvisation is maybe like one aspect of spirituality, kind of like speaking in tongues. It's the ecstatic element. It's almost non-creative in a weird way. It's more of a sort of a state that you put yourself in, the mystical state. But then there's other things that like in music, at least for me, I don't spend all that much time improvising because either they're I mean it's fun to do, but it's also kind of like just like losing. It's like going nowhere and nowhere to and not arriving anywhere anyway. But I get like things that come to me, sort of like fully formed ideas that come to me. I don't think that they're I wouldn't put them on the order of being fully religious visionary things or anything like that. They're just idea conceptions or whatever, like voices or not voices but visions, or I don't know how to explain. I mean, just like fully formed musical pieces with like different components and all that kind of stuff. So and then of course those things that I don't really question very much, and I consider those to be sort of spiritually tapped in kind of modes as well. But then I spend a lot of time crafting them so that they are as accurate as possible. So that's that. Yeah.
I just wanted to. I had when we were talking about the whole cynicism thing and the like sort of impending reaction to cynicism. I mean, I was just thinking that was kind of funny because the last several days I've been witnessing discourse in the SF community about so-called squeakcore, about this sort of like current dominant like trend movement in SF of like just overly positive, like sort of fandom, fan fiction derived kind of like extremely, often very moralistic, didactic sort of science, speculative fiction, science fiction, like, yeah, these sort of like very like comforting, moralistic, kind of hopeful, but in a shallow way stories. And there's this like, and the response to this has been this attempt to like go back to the old cynicism as counterculture, whereas what I think is happening is like there is this response to that wave of cynicism has already been happening for years, but the secular sort of world has not really figured out anything to ground it in, has not figured out a way to give the sort of hope and kindness people are looking for any depth, be that emotional, moral, social depth. And I think that's where precisely a religious element might be a really important and even necessary part of a future or emerging aesthetic movement, to actually give content to that optimism and kindness that people clearly want on some level. And also, I think that would be a more productive, like, outlet for the religious impulse in itself than the kind of stuff Lixon was talking about, where it just turns into these, like, LARP crusades modeled on political micro-ideology and fighting, like And also, just to answer Murad's question, as a poet, I write fiction and poetry, but the fiction is a much more mediated version of the process, which for poetry, for me, has always been when Strangelift was talking about the sort of the mind-breaking sublime thing, for me, poetry has always been my whole approach to writing poetry is I'm feeling something or experiencing something, witnessing something that does not fit into words in the sense of rational categories. I'm going to try to put words on it anyway, and I'm going to try and use words in a way that I can communicate that without being able to necessarily even explain how I'm communicating. And that seems like an incredibly it's essentially trying to do the impossible, and but it's a real methodical process. And I was doing it before I had any sort of explicit spiritual framework in terms of which I understood those things, and my actual spirituality has evolved over the course of doing that and having these dark nights of the soul where that doesn't seem possible for me anymore, or I question what exactly I am doing in trying to do that. What does it mean that I'm trying to do this? What am I tapping into? Do I have even the right to do this, or am I doing some sort of violence to it by this? And at this point, my process of spiritual introspection and my process of poetic writing and almost my process of prayer are almost completely integrated. But yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to interject there because I think those there is a concern. I think because a lot of it is I think it's akin to being witchcraft, and some people might think it's funny and weird, but I think that the whole kind of overlaying of putting words down for things that you don't understand and just sort of seeing what kind of happy
well
mixture.
That's where I've tried to go beyond, but also what you're describing, that is absolutely a critique many people would have of my spirituality. But it's I am trying to I've gone through a revolution where it's I do want to understand it now, in a sense, but the process of understanding itself is no longer fully separate from the process of expressing either.
Right, and but I think the locus of I guess there's got to be a grounding mechanism that sort of keeps you on planet Earth in some sort of sense.
No, that's the thing I've struggled with a lot, and I don't know.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that I'm of the opinion that the values that we all sort of tout and that we all sort of what we were talking about earlier about kindness and stuff like that, and genuine communication or something like that, something akin to that, some sort of benevolent sentiment that we see lacking in the world, or that we long for. Those are all, I think, those are supplied by the religion that we were raised in. I mean, or and the religious sort of epoch that we've been in, the times, so to speak. So I mean, you have we're in this time frame, and this is the religion that we were given, and I think that the compassion and in many other scriptures as well, I'm sure. But I think that like in particular, like we've sort of done away with the God part, but then like kept everything else. And I think that's where we start to like actually kind of like run afoul of the whole plan, and we start to do the work of the actual enemies of that system that are talked about a lot in the Bible. Like we just like other forces, other demonic kind of things that basically are trying to subvert and make us forget that this is the origin of that stuff. At least that's what I think. I could be wrong. I mean, there could be these things all predate the religion. So, but if you start to really think about it, it actually doesn't predate the religion, and it's not, nothing's common sense about it. It's actually very, very doubtful that it started before the religion. So I think it's if anything, it's a byproduct of having the religion for long enough. But it's also the qualities that are touted about in the religion, and those are the qualities that we still sort of go by, except we got rid of the God part. Anyway,
I feel like there's an interesting stuff.
Go ahead, Mo, and then I also want to get Gio's take.
I do find there's an interesting thing in, like, it is absolutely true that, like, a lot of American secularism is still sort of Christianity without the God part. And there have been actual sort of movements within Christianity, like death of God theology, that have embraced that. And then on the other hand, within American Christianity, because of the fact that it's competing with Christianity without the God part, there's a lot of stuff like the Left Behind concept of like the Antichrist as a man of peace, which isn't really from anywhere in the Bible, but it seems like this idea that, like, if you do everything Jesus says, but you don't have the like doctrinal belief, you're going to fundamentally end up doing the opposite. And I am not, from what I've read, and I'm actually reading through the whole Bible this year as a project, like, I'm not aware of that having really much. I feel like there's stories of stuff, like, I'm trying to remember, like, in the story of the Good Samaritan, isn't like Samaritan like an ethnic but also literally a religious minority within like the Near Eastern Judaism at the time? I don't feel like that's necessarily a core idea, but on the other hand, what Ariel's talking about is absolutely real and expressed in, like, if you look at just, again, the kind of spiritual emptiness of like squee-core type contemporary progressive culture that I was talking about before. So definitely, like, there's something to be said for that. And at the same time, I'm suspicious of that suspicion on some level. But yeah, that's entirely cope on my part too.
I think that the part that really gets me about the Bible, and not to come across like I'm just like some religious freak, because I'm not at all. I don't even.
We're all religious freaks here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't go to church or anything like that, but I have a personal relationship. But what I kind of find weird about the whole thing, it's like a Rubik's cube. Is that if everyone sort of denies God or like forgets about him, and just just like throws him out with yesterday's newspaper, which it seems like that's the trend. I mean, that seems to be the growing trend, and I mean, Judaism is no less than in Christianity, but there seems to be a very direct correlation between, like, this discarding of the religious order and some sort of like some sort of waltz to the apocalypse. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it seems to be. It seems to there is maybe it's just paranoia on behalf of everybody that's just sort of been raised with this stuff. But I think that like the conundrum is that if everybody were to ditch this religious stuff and just kind of just be good people, blah blah blah, they would actually be doing what is sort of prophesized, right? I mean, isn't that the idea that there won't be any more religion, there won't be any more God in the conversation?
That's precisely not what's prophesized. Is actually that the Antichrist and the false prophet come along and declare themselves God. Like,
right.
It's
well, I mean, insofar as you can declare yourself anything, I mean, there is a sort of there's the dogma, there's which is the opposite of God, right? I mean, it's the dogma. It seems like it's the idea that that there of scientism, for instance, or technology, or there are all these things that Ted Kaczynski was talking about. it's the thing that basically is not religion. Whatever it is, it's almost like a religion of negation that doesn't want to claim that it's a religion, but it's basically it functions as much as a religion because it has us in its grip, in its vice grip, and it basically forces us to go along with its program. So it's I mean, in ways that are much more subliminal than any kind of legal, political kind of mandate or anything like that. I'm saying it's like it's underneath the surface, and it's a very weird thing. It's a psychological kind of underpinning of things. It's kind of like a merging of the shadow and the person, in a sense. I don't know if you know what I'm saying.
Again, my own spiritual practice is so. Like, on one hand, I feel like my own spiritual practice has been very much an attempt to actually make a spiritual basis for the sort of post-spiritual world. So on some level, I'm like exactly what you're warning about. But on the other hand, this puts me in just as much opposition to the world if I try to do this seriously. So I feel like there isn't this singular religion that all non-religion is, or that everything that doesn't. There's all sorts. What there is like, in thelemic terms, an abyss. There's like there's all these different possible arrangements of like and orders of metaphysical sort of like arrangements,
possibilities,
and people don't know what they're doing in that. People will unconsciously project entire metaphysical orders from what they think is common sense, and they'll be completely contradictory, like from one person to the next, from one class to the next, from one like social habitus to the next. I don't think it's some like universal like pit of like a singular like Luciferian rationalism or whatever. But I do notice that there's this point that the world seems to operate as that. I feel like the Scott Alexander Moloch essay is a great like description of what you're referring to. And I think something this conversation has been orbiting for like the entire time to some extent is people becoming religious through a negation of something, through like the Travis Scott thing. Like I'm not Christian, but I definitely think Travis Scott was worshiping demons. Like this sort of like and I think there's both a good and a bad side to, like, as I was saying earlier, like I sort of get the like Alex, like I can get hyped to an Alex Jones rant. I feel like the two versions of this that are crystallizing is like, I feel like I can get with a spiritual negation of the world out of righteous anger, and I'm more wary of a spiritual negation of the world out of fear. Like, you don't need to go reach into like the hypothetical future and be like, oh, what if we're all going to be computers? What if we're all going to be in virtual reality? You can like look at the world as it is now and be like I was just reading statistic in like a class for a completely secular women's studies class, like fucking like millions of children being tricked every year. Like that's already here. Like
Yeah.
I feel, yeah.
But it's also I feel like the fear thing is much more immediate, and it sort of has if you can tap into people's fear, they see there's the thing. I find this one thing that's kind of seems to be a universal. It seems to be, people seem to have this idea that like what affects them is something that they can make a conscious choice about. I mean, so people like, for instance, like treat ideas and treat just getting exposed to things. Basically, either they poo-poo them or they get into them or whatever. You know, they either support them or they like them. They kind of pick on them like they pick their friends, basically, and they don't, if they don't like an idea, they think that it's basically, it doesn't affect them, so they basically poo-poo it and they ignore it, and so now that's not based out of it's out of hate. You know, if they hate something, they think that they have a conscious choice in the matter, and what happens is that in fact they what you get is like, you know, sort of like how Trump became how Trump was elected. I mean, it's basically the Streisand effect, right? I mean, where like basically, you know, you tell somebody not to think about the Stay Puft Marshmallow moment, man, and that's what happens. So it's a conundrum. I mean, the things that affect us most actually are actually completely the opposite of what we consciously support.
Yeah, I think that ties back to the Jungian thing people were trying to talk about earlier about the shadow. That's the formation of the shadow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and what I think is that when people talk about, you know, sort of like opening the door to sort of like all these different ideas of what, you know, and somebody's personal agency in regards to spirituality and all this kind of stuff, you know, all the while sort of like living their day-to-day secular existence, you know, where we count the days of the Gregorian Julian calendar or whatever, and we are, you know, firmly just within this you know paradigm of this is 2022 years since the, you know, birth of Jesus, and yet even though nobody's believing in him anymore, but everybody's still fucking telling, you know, still counting the days as if that's what they are. And nobody's thinking about it. Nobody's thinking about what that is. And I feel like the people that sort of designed it that way were responding to the apocalyptic things in the Bible as a and it was a way to sort of keep them at bay, to ensure that like that if they plant little like kernels of you know, of godness everywhere, little reminders, basically, like for instance, like in time, for instance, if they just that would sort of stop us from ever forgetting and ever from being fully able to completely rewrite the book, at least not in that time. So as long as like, you know, we're still like, you know, counting the calendar years with this system, and we don't reset, you know, go to year zero like in Cambodia or something like that, which is always a possibility. It's on the table. It could happen. I could see it happening very soon.
Who would be the Khmer Rouge in this scenario? Like, none of these sort of progressive woke people like actually agree with each other on a sufficiently like programmatic thing to execute a year zero. You'd have the
No, you have a bunch of people that are basically you have a bunch of people that feel insignificant and powerless to affect any change over any kind of like sweeping kind of like flood of whatever is sort of like just projected to them, or broadcast to them. I mean, the levers of power right now are extremely dim and not in the foreground. So you don't know what you're fighting against. You don't know who to, and that's by design. Obviously, that's exactly what they need in order to do their bidding. They need to basically hide in plain sight. They need to basically sow divisions and get everybody thinking that they have a choice in all sorts of things, and to muddy up their sense of what they know, and that all that stuff is extremely successful at bringing about a sort of anti-spirituality. I mean, that's what it's for.
I mean, my point is basically just that I don't think a spirituality founded on fear is capable of doing the thing Strangelift was talking about, of generating new meaning, even if that new meaning is a reaffirmation of an old meaning, of making that meaning real now.
No, not on its own, but it's a good way to disarm it. It's a way to open up people to be suggestible. I mean, like the mass psychosis thing that we keep on hearing about is just that. It's you get people into this ambient fear and lack of meaning in their lives, and then with somebody strategically kind of like creating the solution, and then sort of having something that like everybody that's been in the state can sort of rally around. It's extremely easy, and people have proven to be extremely pliable, and they'll throw away their values, everything that they've known and said all their lives. And I've seen it with my own eyes. I mean, this is we're living right in the middle of it. I mean, it feels like people are like literally 2 years old. People that I respect, looked up to all my life, and I'm not a genius by any, on any level. I'm just completely just like a normal dude. Like I have no claim to be that intelligent or anything like that. I'm average, and this is, but it's pretty much like across the board. I mean, maybe it's also because of my role in sort of making my life hell at this point, but I don't know. I just kind of see that there's this sort of wimpy kind of like there's a bunch of people talking about it. There's people that like know what's going on, and they sort of have a little bit more of an active role, sort of getting people talking about it. But beyond talking about it, there seems to be very little being done, and it takes bravery and it takes courage and doing some crazy things. But I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree on the it seems like a lot of talk thing, and I don't know, maybe it's just an issue of like where on my end where I just didn't really feel like it would ever leave like a Twitter space. I don't know, but I don't know like what it takes to push people to do things. But anyway, Gio, I know you've been patient, and then Alexander too. Didn't know if you wanted to jump in on that.
Oh yeah, this has been brilliant. I guess I'm always I'm always taken aback in the presence of my good friend Ariel here, because he explains things way better. But I think to comment on the trajectory of the conversation, what Mo and Ariel were talking about, the problem is that when it comes to this discourse around a religious revival, there is a problem with the commodification, or rather the like appropriation of religion apart from its actual tradition in, for example, honoring and worshiping Christ. There is always the problem of like, I guess the best example would be this like instrumentalized, like Elaine de Botton School of Life cult, where it's like basically like rationalist or neo-rack cults, where it's like, let's take the best things of religion and make them useful. It's like, well, that I even see like trads like dipping into that territory when it comes to talking about religion and politics, and that's my problem. And what Mo brought up with like twee core, like is it twee or squee core? I forget. Like
Squeak
a lot of
squeacore, although twee
yeah,
also works.
yeah. That's really interesting because I noticed like a lot of quote unquote progressive spaces or whatnot, a lot of like discourse around the whole like Reddit hecking wholesome chungus type of stuff. A lot of that I think is cope for the fact that it is like
I don't know. We can hear you, Gio. Can you? I think there was an interruption of some kind. Can you hear it? Can you hear him, Mo?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear him. We hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear him.
Oh, okay, good. Like a lot of that I think is cope for the fact that for a large part of the predominant liberal ideology, as Mo was saying, is in direct competition with the older Christian worldview, but also for the fact that a lot of it isn't providing like a very good basis for people's greater inner needs or spiritual life. But another question is that, and of course, I 100% agree with Ariel about these like darker forces. And it's funny, like people bring up Alex Jones, because to me, I think Alex Jones is really the closest to like a poet mystic of our time. I know this is like a totally insane statement, but yeah, but even like the way you were talking about approaching the work of art and one's beliefs, I think the problem is that we have a very like, I would say, Hollywoodized picture of the creation of the work of art. Like me being an artist myself who happens to be religious, I think that creation comes about in those little instances of connecting things that are usually unsaid. It's like what de Kooning said, where he's like, I'm slipping into the work. I have these moments of slipping into it, but there's only moments. When it comes to the actual creation of the work of art, it's very second order in that you have to think through the steps of whatever artistic medium you're using. For instance, like the best example would be like printmaking is totally different from painting, because with printmaking, it's very systematic, it's very repetitive, and there are like flashes of that creative process of what you're trying to get at here and there. Even painting itself, or something like music, would be something where the creation of something relies on very, I guess you would say, what is it, left brain thinking, but you still are afforded those moments of insight sparsely. And I think like the sort of picture that people have of the artist in the late 20th century as being like, pure brilliance coming out, and it's like, it's something that it's the wisdom of the child, blah blah blah. That to me is largely sort of like a meme picture. It betrays the actual the process that it takes to create something. Like a large part of it comes about through the preparatory stages of creating something. Like to me, a sketch can be more beautiful than the finished work because it has a level of vitality. It makes space. It lets a space into the world rather than a finished work that is 100% totalized. So I think there's a more nuanced picture to what we mean by creating a spiritual work of art, because there is something there that is not easily explainable through the trope or the meme of like instant creation. You are enlightened by your own, ability to create. So yeah, I think other than that, like I 100% agree with what people were saying. And I think like the whole like hecking wholesome stuff is largely just a cope. And so my brain is sort of melting after 3 hours, so I'm sorry. But Alexander, you've been waiting patiently as well. So take it away, my friend.
I'll try to kind of make sense of what I'm saying, because I have like some things in my head running around. I think that one thing that the modern world has kind of taken from people is a sense of tragedy in life, and I think that's a very important thing that we've lost. And so like I was reflecting upon like why do people kind of like always like kind of fall in ugliness? It's kind of going back to I said like maybe an hour ago or something, but I kind of came to like the conclusion that it's in part related to there's a denial of the natural forms that exist, and you can essentially structure that around someone's religious beliefs that that kind of passed down, or just in general, like the Platonic forms that exist, and that's an authority structure, you know. And what happens is that in a cynical society, you reject authority because there's a lack of faith in institutions of authority, you know. And so when you make it yourself the authority, which is kind of like it's kind of relates to like the Nietzsche's kind of stuff about God being dead. It's like when you take away the authority outside of yourself, so essentially like you detach from authority of the other, of these forms of God, you essentially force yourself to accept the authority of yourself, and generally man can't be like the authority on these matters. And so so you're left with the feeling of like of this kind of like emptiness and this hollowness, and that produces like a fear and an ugliness and pain, and you don't know how to deal with that, so you're kind of forced to live in suffering instead of accept the tragedy of that, which would be and you can only come to, and so what you do is you form like you essentially accept the catharsis of ugliness, and so you make do with the ugly by like accepting the ugly instead of resolving it. And so I think a lot of people that are very open-minded, and I would say maybe a little liberal-minded, they kind of accept the ugliness and try to like kind of like work with it, because it is still a real phenomenon they feel, but they can't escape it. It's like they feel attached to it because they can't like comprehend the like they can't live with the other authority structure, the forms that like kind of permeate in society, but they don't really know how to deal with it. And a lot of our institutions tell you to reject the authority figure. And a lot of these authority figures are metaphysical things that you can't grasp onto. So you grasp onto things that you can, which is the ugly, which is like the very much the non-confrontational emotions, right? Like the things that don't make you kind of go upwards, and they aren't hierarchical, but they are very much on the bottom level. And so, you know, you kind of adopt these kind of approach to life. And the cynical stuff comes in that if you deny, like if you kind of deny authority, if you deny God, and you know, you can say and or depending on how you view them, is that you become cynical of salvation. You know, you become cynical of something greater coming. And so you kind of, again, you can't accept the tragedy. And if you don't, and tragedy is tragedy implies there's a fall, or there's something that's out the other side of that, you know. And people live in suffering now, and so in suffering there is no up or down, there is no fall. This is why great art is so important, because you know, when you see something beautiful that's damaged, you're like, oh, that fell. You know, there's a fall there. So the rejection of that fall is also something we deal with. Like people don't know how to deal with it because it's like we're kind of denied that idea of a fall.
It's the embrace of the fall. We embrace the fall.
Well, we don't even believe in the fall. We just think that we're here, and there's a rejection of that structure. So people reject the structure, and they think they're just damaged, and so they kind of operate as if like a damaged people, and that's where like the cynicism comes in, because you're like, there's nothing like above. It's only me here. And another
right,
thing,
it's the reverse. It's the reverse of the Christian idea of, like, you know, Jesus dying for our sins, and basically.
So like, this goes to the.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It goes to the kind of and so this is why I think when people try to be serious now, like, oh, let's talk about serious things, you're always left with this kind of like snarkiness or this saturated approach to kind of like art and just in society in general, is because like people have to believe that there is someone strong enough to liberate them. You know, this is something I talk about mostly in politics, but it applies in art and in our approach to life, is that if you think someone can't save you and they can't win the war for you, you won't join them in that conflict. And so now we live in a society where people don't believe there's a savior coming. And so that approach kind of blocks you from actually being serious about certain things. And I think, if someone's like, think of it like in our politics, you know, it's like when someone's like, okay, I have the plan, here's how we do this, and you're like, man, come on, cut that out, you know? Like there's like this disbelief in greatness, and I think and greatness and that hierarchical acceptance of that hierarchy is that, I mean, this is very Jordan Peterson-y, but I mean the guy's right on something, you know. And I think this is I'll just leave it at that, you know. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I disagree with like a ton of that, but my brain is starting to melt at this point, so I'm wondering if we should like just start wrapping up at this point. But if before we do that, I just want to tell everybody in here, particularly the Christians, to go check out my friend Sonority Liz, who's written like a huge amount of like really beautiful Christian hymns. Yeah.
What do you disagree with?
Again, I don't think it would be actually productive to get into at this point, but
speak up, bro. Speak your mind. More, let it out.
Like, I'm not sure where to start at this point, and I'm like,
well, what's you don't have anything to say. Oh my god. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's fair.
Wait, Mo, how do you spell your friend's name?
Sonority, Sonority Lys.
Okay. I'm adding her on Twitter at least.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
You doing okay over there, Max? You sound like you're dead.
Yeah, I just got like really sleepy for some reason. Probably because I was like drinking whiskey, but yeah. Good chat, even though I kind of like tapped out of participating in it towards the end. But yeah. Yeah, also shouts out to neither of these people made it. But I think as far as like Twitter weirdos go, Vice Load and Angie Rose with Teeth are both like very excellent musicians who have like weird, like esoteric, Abrahamic, religious perspective informing their art.
Yeah, if there's anything I want to see out of all of this stuff is way more. Well, I mean, specifically for me, spiritual is like a weird word, but like for me specifically, like more Christian art. It's been something I've been waiting for a very, very long time, and I think we're starting to see more of it, which I'm excited about. And
I think that there's I think it's all there, and it always has been. When you think about like the sort of the I think that like a lot of the things that we just take to be sort of secular rock music and just just love songs that are just happening on a non-religious level. I think that like there's religion behind all of that, and specifically Christian for the most part. There's no shortage. I think it's really just the history of music up until fairly recently was that it just didn't explicitly have Christ on the cover. You know what I'm saying? Like it just but people I mean James Brown had it in the background the whole time. I mean everything that you think of. I mean it's pretty much there. It just doesn't need to be it's taken as a given, I guess. It was taken for granted probably.
I guess I agree with that, because there is plenty of like Christian, I guess, art out there, whether it be music, movies, or whatever, and how I guess prevalent you want it to be is dependent on like I guess that art form. For example, I think one reason why it's so, I guess Christian music especially, is so mocked on the internet for, I mean, is probably because like it's so blatant, and to people that aren't I guess familiar with the religion or see it or automatically have some sort of negative connotation with Christianity, they just automatically reject it, and like it's sort of segregated is the wrong word, but just immediately laid to like the sidelines, I guess. So I don't know. I kind of, when it's that blatant, the influence, I'm not sure how accepting anyone would want to be of that sort of art form.
I think there's like a big difference I've noticed between like art like informed by Christianity and like art where it sort of like functions similarly to like hymns. There's like a praise or like worship type.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like thinking of like in hip hop, like Kanye obviously being like such a visible like Christian artist, but then you have like
rapper, et cetera.
Yeah, and you have like
isn't it Leibach's contention that like hymns are really the origin of pop songs? Liebach,
Yeah, but
real band.
I mean, sure, it can tie back to that, but how like influential is it? Like maybe you can say, I don't know, the Bible is the influence of everything just because it's one of the first like great literature works. Whether even if you ignore like I don't know the religious value, the religious context. I mean, it's not like how similar are they between like the hymns from the Bible between that and like fucking Taylor Swift. Like how there's not much connection, even though you can say it can be traced back.
I mean, the idea is
well,
specifically
but
form.
secular human love and divine love can like fuse and become the same thing. Like if you listen to Sufi music by like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, it's like it seamlessly goes between the like human and the divine, and also like weaves in these lyrics about like drinking and being intoxicated, but the intoxication is like a spiritual intoxication. It kind of like integrates the secular into the spiritual.
Also,
like it's impossible.
I mean, also like when
Go
you
ahead.
listen to like old like Lydian harmonies or Lydian songs from like the Greek times. That's prior to but the music I had back then, was just like played on this one and somebody singing.
Cutting out a bit there, Mr. Pink.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
Okay. Yeah.
Just before that, you cut out a bit.
Okay. Well, I'll do my best. I'll probably sign off after this, but yeah, no. I mean, when you had there are these little like there are these instruments that they play. There are these little songs that they wrote. They were like, they're just like songs. They're just like 2-minute songs essentially, and they have like vocals and they have it's closer to a pop music thing than it is to a sort of Wagnerian kind of epic kind of thing. There's a lot. I mean, it's also again, once again, I don't think that's religion. It's just the form of these things.
Well, there's an argument that you mentioned about being pop music rather than something Wagnerian. And let me just say, the foundation of what we call Western classical music was pretty much love songs to God that were like standardized in a way by people like Hildegard von Bingen and other religious figures. So there was always a popular element to bridging the gap between what we know as musical composition and the expression of worship. And now that you mentioned that there is no many music informed by Christianity, and someone mentions Kanye as an influential and very visible figure, you're right, reality, but you also need to look at how the music community interacts in places like East and Southern Africa, where gospel music and other forms of Afro gospel share chart positions and radio play with pop stars, with the rap stars, they're part of the mainstream in a way that doesn't happen in other places in the world where it became kind of a niche thing.
Yeah, I think Brazil's the same. There's like contemporary Christian music that charts pretty big over there.
Yeah.
And if you think about like the music that was that is the basis of rock and roll, and the folk musicians, the blues and all that kind of stuff from the South and all that kind of stuff. The gospel definitely like was a social marriage of the an ecstatic Christian sentiment, and so it's never fully ever been expunged from that. So it's I think that like the what made it sort of like different than anything that had been before was the way that it was the appeal was so broad, or that it was exploited to sort of ensnare the minds of people all far and wide. Obviously, a perversion of what it started as, but yeah.
Yeah, that's actually something I love, and then I'll go to Murad. But like, there's actually an article or a study done, and I actually just pulled it up. It was called "Where Else Did They Copy Their Styles But from the Church?" And it was a history of rock and roll and how it started in the Pentecostal church in the in the southern states. With the Sister Rosetta Stone, and like how basically Elvis and all these people basically copied their singing style, even their hair, based on like Pentecostal and evangelists that were coming through, and how like it started there, and then when it left, the Pentecostal church basically said all the rock guys were sellouts for like trading their music to the world, which is super fascinating. And I think you're totally right. I think music, the Christian stuff hasn't really gone away. It's just like sometimes it's just not very visible. I mean, like UK Garage was started by was Todd Terry that's has a Christian origin. There's a lot of house music. Robert Hood is a strong believer. He helped start techno in Detroit and minimal techno, and so there's definitely a thread that weaves in and out.
This was a Christian nation for a while. I think it was taken for granted, like all throughout the 20th century. So when people kind of think that it's just sort of that it wasn't Christian, that people just were secular and this wasn't religious on any level because it wasn't stated explicitly, or because they were sinful or whatever. I think that's completely mistaken. I think that very recently is only when it's truly been divorced from its religious aspect.
Yeah, I agree. And it was Todd Edwards, not Todd Terry. Sorry. Murad, you were going to say something?
Well, I just maybe had another question, because we're talking about like the difference between, say, Christian artists and secular artists and people selling out. And I'm wondering, because sometimes I'll be listening to certain songs by artists who are like country singers, and they talk about the Bible in between like doing lines or something. I'm thinking, is that also like maybe authentically Christian music? Because I wonder, we have this dividing line, right?
Sin is not like is not. I think sin is just an aspect that's integrated in both Judaism and Christianity. So it's really that's what is worship? It's basically the rereading the book that the Jews that the Jewish Bible is based on, that they wrote, that Moses wrote. This catalog of basically of mistakes that and that's unique to Judaism and Christianity. It's just basically like a series of blunders that we worship by remembering them over and over again, like the ways that we basically pissed off God and how we screwed up with this, that. It's just one long series of screw ups. So we're all bad. We're all bad. We can't help it,
There's
that tension between sin, like the impulse to love the world and to sin, and the like higher aspiration for heaven. Like that tension is sort of like a driving force in music. It's like without that tension, it sort of like rings hollow. Like I feel like the reason Leonard Cohen's music is so effective is because he's got like both, he's got this sense of like tragedy and love of like horny sort of like longing, and like he is always like sort of holding that, he's like being real, and holding that in contrast with his like Jewish and Buddhist, mystical aspirations. But when it's either just like purely like hedonism, or just this sort of like almost like fake feel good thing about like it's all right, we're all saved, it's like we're all going to heaven, it's like that doesn't cook. You need to have this sort of like push pull, the like tension. I think
that's kind of what I was trying to say with what I was like about like like what the nature of ugliness and ugly art. It's like the denial of the the denial of the tragic kind of produces ugliness in art. That's kind of my point. I don't know, like I mean, what is your definition? What are your guys? I mean, I don't know if it's okay for me to ask a question to the audience here, but like, what do you guys consider is like ugly art, and what are the like axioms that produce ugliness?
Like that sort of pastel, like social justice art, where I think it was
flat design.
You were talking about this, right, on Twitter. Like, it's like these weird, like sort of construction paper looking like block cut people that it's like this weird, like sort of hollowed out feeling to it. Like there's no
corporate Memphis.
What would you say?
It's the activist art stuff always reminds me is like a precursor, like the bad art, like Ruth Gator Ginsburg stuff, like is like almost like a precursor to like corporate Memphis, like the Facebook style art.
Yeah, it doesn't have any like particular
furries and avatars that are like anime or whatever. That's kind of nasty to me.
I think another point is
to humans of flat design. It's basically the corporate
flat
art.
Design.
There's a lack of tension. I think that's there's a lack of tension in the art, and that kind of appeals to the kind of like people that deny the tragedy of life, and they kind of live on a very base level of reality.
It's scary.
Exactly, because
I guess that's the point. It's with you that I almost that I didn't want to go into because I didn't want to have like a huge presupposition.
Gio's joining
debate. It's just that I don't think like tragic tension necessarily has to be expressed or understood as hierarchy, but that's not here or there. I don't want to derail the whole discussion on that because I don't think I could like go into the reasoning for that without like a whole other level of like discussion.
Murad, why don't you jump in? You've had your hand up.
Yeah. So I mean, I think my question was really like you guys answered my question. Thank you for everything. It seems like it's more like the struggle against sin as like an integral part of maybe Christian art, or as like that at the boundary between what you would call secular and non. I mean, I come from a Muslim background, so I there are some similarities to like in that inner struggle against sin and towards spirituality. Literature.
That's what I was saying. Like also like how I kind of art got me into religiosity, and that like beauty kind of forces you to put limits on things and be intolerant to certain things, and that unison kind of and that union or kind of manifests in like very like deep forms of like duty, like service, and these are things that are very much tied to religion, and that's kind of like my pathway in to like the kind of the religious mind, let's say.
Go ahead, Gio.
No, really quickly. I just think that before we go, ugliness to me, like I'm criticized all the time on like trad Twitter for my love of modern art, but I think that to me, true ugliness is something that is, at the end of the day, privation. It's something that is a lack, or it's something that is instrumentalized against the sort of deepest quatrains of the human soul. So flat design is interesting, and I didn't come up with the term. It was first theorized by Eli Schiff, a good friend of mine, who is a prominent design critic. And I think that the reason flat design is so stark and mortifying is that it's purely in the service of a totalizing and alienating regime, because it's designed to flatten the subject into this, I guess people call the gray goo of like modernity. And a lot of it, like the forces of like neoliberal, like late capitalism, is really like that is the perfect picture of the subject. It is a one-dimensional and totally flat, shot through with power subject. And so that truly is like a deeply like psychopolitical and disciplinary picture of the self that is people immediately recognize as terrible and alienating. And a lot of it is generated by AI. So it's like say no more in terms of the actual. Yeah, exact. I hate the Antichrist. But I actually was planning on writing a book with Eli Schiff on humans of flat design as reality gamer. But he is unfortunately tied up at the moment. But I still want to like write something on the subject, because I feel that flat design and what I call neoliberal kitsch is the driving aesthetics of the world we're living in, and it needs to be thoroughly and viciously critiqued at all costs. Thank you.
Oh yeah, we were talking about this because I wrote like a whole essay about this a while back, and I just like never. Yeah, it's your topic to speak on, Gio. Like I don't know why, but it was like I didn't publish it in like the moment where like I felt like putting that energy out has like passed. So it's all you to tell the world why it needs to be destroyed
Oh no,
or whatever.
maybe we can collab. I think that could be.
Yeah. I might as well just like send you the
Make an NFT.
Yeah, send it to me, man. Yeah, make an NFT critiquing NFTs. That's amazing. But by the way, I think we're very privileged to have Ariel stay with us because he truly is a visionary, and I consider him a good friend of mine. So, I mean, every guest has been great, and I want to talk to people a lot further. I don't know where Lionel went because I was really interested in talking with him about Oh, he's still here, I think. Liberation theology. I think that would be great. So yeah, but this whole night's been amazing. I hope that maybe this recording can get out publicly, just for the sheer fact of like the vanity of talking with great people and having it released to the world somehow.
Fame whore.
So, yeah, well, hey, as a podcaster, it comes with the territory. So, oh boy.
Yeah, I'll make sure to get it out. Yeah, I think it's been pretty good. I'll there's one funny story I want to share real quick, and I think it was kind of to this idea of like this tension between like what spiritual music and secular music. There's this, so like I mentioned earlier in the call, like after I got like radically saved, it was like I ran more in these like charismatic Pentecostal circles, and like one group, this like kind of contemporary worship guy, he does like worship music and just like regular music, like just sings about his life, right? And in Christian and like in church culture, like worship is like a genre for some reason. It's not even like and that's probably how I should have rephrased my question earlier. Is I want to see more, not seeing more Christian music per se, like although I do, I'm more so exploring what the boundaries of like what is worship. That's really my core like driver. But anyway, this guy comes and he's like a contemporary Christian artist, and everyone expects to like do the full on like raise your hands and worship, and he plays worship songs, but then he plays like normal songs, and it was just the funniest thing ever was just seeing everyone trying to figure out how to respond, because you're in a church setting too, so like everyone like slowly lowers their hands and that has no idea what they're supposed to do because it's blending worship with like just like normal life. It was a very fun moment, at least for me. I don't know. Something I always remember and enjoy. But I love that kind of stuff. I want to see more people just like not. I think my biggest critique of Christian music right now on the church side is that it's more so music for the church market than it is like professing, like worship or just like making something beautiful because you want to. It's like there's a market to address, and that's the only, like, out of all the Christian music I hear, like that's the one I'm probably the least interested in hearing. Although there is good worship out there, it's just more utilitarian to me than it is like, aesthetically interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like that's like the biggest like problem, I guess, with like when Christian themes and art can like cross over to like other audiences is like when it like enters, just when it enters that territory of like, now let's like all like praise, like let's all worship, because like then like I guess if you don't want to like radically like affirm something, then you'll be like, well, like I'm out of here now, so I keep tying it back to like Kanye. I don't know if like everyone else is as big of a Kanye head as me, but like it's interesting how like I think on his new album he had like a lot of secular people like still enjoying it, but it like definitely had that element of it too. It like tied it back to like this theme of like being a celebration. So he did have like a sort of balance with it, but like he's not the only rapper who like, certainly not the only rapper who like believes in God, but he like went more in that direction of like having it be like like really like affirming religion, and like he probably like didn't go as far in that direction as like he might have, and like for that reason like still was able to like cross a bridge between religious and secular fans.
Well, I think he was able to cross the bridge primarily probably because he already had the platform, and people by then already kind of just thought he was crazy anyway and just kept going with it.
Yeah, but there were like other people, like Chance the rapper like dropped his like more Christian album, and like everyone like totally just like was met with a horrible reception.
Yeah. But I guess Kanye managed to do it even all the way back with the first album, you know, Jesus Walks. That was his, like in the song, The Club, everybody screaming out, Jesus Walks. And I remember like Jay-Z was like, he said like he wanted everyone in the club to actually be like talking about Jesus, and he succeeded, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As maybe as corny as it sounds, that was one of the songs that actually helped me like change my life. As corny as it is, I was like on the highway and I'm like, it's like 7 a.m. and I'm driving home from being out all night, and I was like, oh my gosh, my life's a mess. And then that song comes on and I like bawled. And I didn't get saved then, but like later on I did, and it was like that was like one of the moments that like helped me like redirect.
Yeah, that's an amazing song. And yeah, like to what you were saying, Sam, I remember hearing like the anecdote that like he was like making that in like Def Jam's recording studios, and like all Jay-Z's like more like gangster friends are just like laughing at him. And like he was like saying like no, this is gonna be a hit, and like he played and they were all just like making fun of it. And yeah, I don't know. It just shows that you can like put, I don't know, you put whatever energy you want out if you like believe in it, I guess.
He definitely showed them. I mean, I remember when Brian Wilson was writing like God Only Knows for Pet Sounds, which they were like trying to pressure him to take God out of the title, you know, even though it's not even like that overtly religious.
Yeah.
Like the spirit of that song is religious, but the lyrics are like sort of just about human love, you know? Well, not exactly, but
right. Yeah, I don't know that song that well, but it never struck me as like extremely overtly religious. It's just like figure of speech, like God only knows, you know.
Yeah, but he said like Brian Wilson didn't write the lyrics exactly. It was like Tony Asher who was like the guy who got to do that for Pet Sounds, and like Brian Wilson wrote it with the intent of being a song for God, even though the lyrics don't 100% reflect that fact.
Mm-hmm. My friend convinced me that I need to like have like a deep like Beach Boys phase. Like I know like the Beatles pretty well, but like I was always more like, yeah, Beach Boys are good, but like I didn't like obsess over them. I think I need to like have a phase where I like obsess over the Beach Boys. I think the Beatles have like a little like too much like MK Ultra in it, and like the Beach Boys are like auditory like frequency you can like fully like trust, if that makes any sense.
That does make a lot of sense. Yeah, the Beach Boys. Yeah, like I think I was originally like the Beach Boys didn't sound as like fresh as the Beatles to me and like innovative, but yeah, I definitely like hit a point though with Pet Sounds where I was like the like quality of the emotion in it is a little more like it's powerful. It's
I mean, yeah, the Beatles have like all these like there's just like so much like weird like whimsy and like irony and shit in like all of it. It all feels like this like weird like bizarre like performative like put on, which is like fun. I mean, obviously talking about like the later stuff, not like I Want to Hold Your Hand, but yeah.
Controversial take. I detest the Beatles. I'm a Cream fan of that era, and John Lennon wrote quite possibly the most nihilistic song in human existence. So
yeah,
it's to me it's all spiritual poison.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's not that controversial anymore. I feel like it's I feel like both on Twitter and like I noticed in culture, there's a big like anti-Beatles kick.
Yeah,
like Yeah.
The celebrities all doing the Imagine sing along at the beginning of COVID. That was definitely a point.
I was like just like I watched the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight, and then after I went outside of the sports bar, I was like talking to these like random black guys, and I was like I was like drunk. I forget like why I started talking to them. I was like, oh, like what type of music y'all like? And they were like, we like music from the 60s. I was like, I asked like most basic questions, like, do you like the Beatles? And this dude is like, the Beatles were fascists. I was like, damn, is this guy
God,
reading like logo dataless Twitter feed?
Oh, heckin' wholesome Norwood Rosicrucianism. The Beatles, like, what a take by Lolgo. What a take. I mean, I mean, we all have had our falling out with him, so I guess it's all right to. But how is the Beatles fascist?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really get him to like that random guy to like elaborate on his opinion, but
MI6 probably the Rand Corporation really brought them to America. I think that's probably why they're fascist.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like weird. We're getting straight from the talk, but there's a lot of like weirdness there, like with them like deliberately putting like they like deliberately put like fake like cryptic messages in it just to like fuck with like the schizos who are like reading all this like weird stuff into their songs, and then like the Manson thing ended up like happening because allegedly of Charles Manson interpreting the lyrics in Helter Skelter, which is like a Paul song and not even like John songs. Who was like putting in all the like weird like acid stuff and like messages just to like fuck with people's heads.
Yeah,
I don't know. Just like so many weird stories.
Yeah, they truly are the artists of the global liberal regime.
They really are, and like and like all their songs that are not the like Beach Boys who we're contrasting with them, are like, as far as I know, Beach Boys aren't even like remotely a political band, but like all the Beatles like songs, like messages like that were political are like counter-revolutionary, like Revolution off of the White Album, where it's like if you're into Chairman Mao, nobody's gonna want to fuck you. It's like the lyrics go.
Man.
But George, I think George is an authentically God-pilled artist, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. But on like Krishna stuff, yeah. But yeah, it's like interesting because they all had the like acid and guru phase. And the guru who they studied with was like accused by like Indian Communist Party of like being like a front for them to like smuggle like radioactive weapons with the CIA. And now he runs or he's probably dead now, but he ran like a transcendental meditation, which like David Lynch is in. But
that's right. Abida, I think his name was, or
Maharishi Yogi.
Oh yeah. They had a thing with Ravi Shankar, if I recall. That was I think that was
Yeah, they all went in like their weird different directions. Like John Lennon was like the first guy down like the very common today like edgelord to woke pipeline, where he's like he was like writing all these like racist songs for the Beatles, like Get Back. It was like originally like the lyrics were like "Get back to your own country," like Pakistanis, because they're just like around in the studio making it.
Based.
And then then they like changed it obviously for like the released version. But then like when he does his like solo career with like Yoko, he's like all his songs are like super like preachy, like one world, like one love, like type message.
A racist who married an Asian woman? No way, dude.
I remember. Oh my god, it's funny. It's so true though. Like I remember Nightmare Vision had this podcast back when, ironically enough, back the original Tech Wars, where he was talking about the pipeline of like SA goons.
Yeah.
Being like these ultra woke, like Matty Iglesias types.
Yeah.
And how, like they used to post like gamer words on the, I forget which board that was called, where it was like the garbage board and it's like, apparently, and now low tax is unfortunately passed, and they like robbed low tax Pianka of his own creation. So, you know.
Flyed is the board you're thinking of, by the way. Flyed.
Yeah, I feel like that was how I always felt John Lennon. He was like the first like something awful type like trajectory dude, and it's like I know that there were these like narratives, like obviously the narrative is like Beach Boys or CIA, Beatles were with CIA, and then there's like also like narrative around it like something awful was like a weird like incubator chamber for like the like narratives we have now, and there was like that activity. I don't know, just like
most of them became journalists. I mean, that's kind of suspicious.
What was it?
Most of them became journalists.
Oh, they did. Yeah.
If you want to unravel the real mystery here, you got to look into how so like they were. I hope this isn't going too far afield, but when they were meditating with the Maharishi in India, Mia Farrow was like also with them. So was Mike Love from the Beach Boys, I think, and like. Later that, I think it was the same year, she was in like Rosemary's Baby, right? Which was directed by Roman Polanski. And it was set in the Dakota apartment in New York City. Then, so the Beatles wrote the White Album when they were in India. And then Manson killed Roman Polanski's wife based on his, interpretation of the White Album lyrics, right? And then John Lennon was shot outside of his home, the Dakota apartments where Rosemary's Baby was filmed.
Yeah, there's like the amount of like weird stuff from that era is like so it like boggles the mind to think about. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like stuff like that, like they were just like at parties where like if you look at like the like spread of how like acid was like being like introduced to like every like influential person, and like how like the Beatles originally got like turned on to acid. I forget all like the details, but there's like some like very funny stories of like the Revolver album where like Paul was on acid and was like saying like incoherent stuff about how there were like 10 planes of existence and he was on like the 6th or something, and they like wrote a whole song about it.
Yeah, I don't think they were even informed the first time that they were dosed either. It was just like some dentist who was their friend just like put it in their tea, basically.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. Yeah, people were doing that all the time in the 60s. Like, can you even imagine like how...
it's nuts.
How like if you have no reference point for like what's happening to you either, like what, like, I don't even know what you would think.
I've never done acid, but I feel like a lot of the times, like the people that make the art that come out of acid, it's like I mean, I can only talk about the Beatles, but like at the Beatle art, it just seems like they go into these like deep artistic places and they come out with nothing. So there's like, it just like more feels that mean nothing at the end.
Yeah, the Beatles like songs are ultimately just like seem like very like whimsical and like not about much. But I feel like the Beatles aren't like very like quintessentially like acid music, other than like a few songs. Like when I think of acid, I think of more like Pink Floyd as like being the most like quintessentially like acid type band. But yeah, you're not wrong.
To the Pink Floyd album, and I think one interesting thing about it, it's like this there's like a path that they're taking. It's totally a journey happening in the music. There's like the structure is leading you somewhere. Like when I think maybe not, I don't know if that's like acid related, but a lot of times there's like a path you're going through with like the music, and it kind of walks you to or something. I use it as like a way of like getting ready to pump up for a lift, but but there is like a path that you're going on with like some of the Pink Floyd stuff, while like some of the lazy music, not even acid, but just the lazy music, some of jazz, like you can work out to it, but there is just lack of like movement towards something. And I think this is where like religious music is a little different, where like religious music is very much like a guided, like it's essentially guiding you towards something. Even the music, there's a structure to it. With a lot of this like garbaggio, it's like there's no real structure. It's just like feels, like in different little clusters.
Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't really put that on like. because you could say that like religious music in terms of like what like the Beatles were inspired by, like Hindu ragas are like very like kind of like the thing going on is that like you're not going anywhere and you're just like sort of like because it doesn't like go by the rules of like Western harmony. It's like very it feels very like doesn't have like the motion to it. You're very much like in place, you know. But that also just like reflects like the differences between you know, Hinduism, you know, and the ideas of like asceticism and like stillness and like retreating to the Godhead versus like Western ideas of like, you know, the you know, story of Jesus' life, which has much more like direction and like activity involved in it. At least how I see it.
Leonard Cohen's based. I mean, someone brought it up, but like Leonard Cohen, I mean, the guy has a horrible voice, but he does so much like good with it. It's quite incredible. Like if you think of Leonard Cohen as like his voice is not impressive at all. Like I actually forced a girl to listen to a couple of his songs, and she's like, "Wow, this guy can't sing at all." I'm like, "Oh, you dumb bitch, you don't get it." But, like, it's like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like a poet singing. Yeah, like I mean, his writing is like top notch, and I don't know. What do you guys think about Leonard Cohen? Like, you know, top songs and stuff like that.
He's great.
Yeah, he's awesome. I mean, yeah, I like it's such a perfect fusion of like it's like God, but also like sex and death, and he's got like I don't know. I mean, I guess this is almost like kind of it feels almost like an Instagram quote thing or something. But I like the like anthem. It has a line in it that's like there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, and I think that's kind of gets to the essence is like he's exploring sort of human woundedness and human weakness, but as a portal to God, kind of, you know.
That's amazing because Leonard Cohen, when you're talking about him exploring this relation between sex and death and human vulnerability, he actually did the title song for I think it was called Something Hidden. He did the title song for the Adam McGowan film Exotica, which was made fairly close to where I live in Toronto. And that film actually is like perfect Leonard Cohen, like hiddenness, but this relationship between sex and death and redemption. And it really is quite interesting when you juxtapose not just his music, but like I think he actually did a cameo in the film. You juxtapose like a lot of that content onto like Kino cinema. It's kind of very interesting that way. Like it almost narrativizes it even more.
Like it reminds me of like how there's like the Chad Jew versus like the Woody Allen Jew, where it's like one is like I'm willing to explore things and not hate myself too much, and the other one's like, oh, like I suck, but here's me like dating hot chicks. Oh, also this. It's like the Leonard Cohen is very confident in how as he approaches life, and he approaches things. He's not critical of himself. And there's not much critique happening in Leonard Cohen's music, which is very interesting to me. It's like it's a very much an observer's eye and an observer going through things, you know. And there's this kind of confidence and approach with respect to the environment. So it's not fear; it's a respect to the environment around him, which I really love about him.
Well, one song I would say also, or not, it's not a song, I guess, but is really good is Gavin Bryars. He was on like Eno's label. And he essentially just recorded a loop. It's like, I don't know, like maybe 12 minutes long of like a homeless guy singing Jesus Blood Never Failed Me Yet. And the cool story about it, I guess, is like, as he was like, you know, messing with the recording, he let it like record in his studio. And I guess he left the door open and as the story goes, a bunch of art students heard this guy singing it over and over and over again. And like when he came back to the studio, there's just like all these art students outside of his door crying and weeping. But it's actually a terrific track. It's like super beautiful.
His I forget what the song's name is. It's the one where it's like I went to a dentist or a doc. I forget. Like, but like essentially he's going to different people, and he's trying to solve like this problem, and like no one really can help him out. Like it's just like this. Like it's his first album. It's just like. It's a lot of like his first album. I don't know if it's his first album, but like his big his first hit album, let's say.
it's a lot of it truly is just a guy walking around in life, just meeting strangers and like engaging with them.
Yeah. What my last contribution to the music topic too that's interesting to me is there was a lot of like outsider musicians that had some like religious songs, like Wesley Willis and Madman Fisher. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with any outsider music stuff like that, but it's like insane and it's also like beautiful. And like even like Daniel Johnston, he had some pretty beautiful spiritual songs too.
Wesley Willis rules, and
dude,
that song by
amazing.
him. That song by him, Jesus is the Answer, is my favorite song by him. But I always thought it was like ironic or something. I didn't know if that was that was like meant to hurt us. Because like
his story's fascinating, actually. Like his whole life, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I know he had like visions of demons and stuff, so I guess it would make sense that he like needed to rely on Jesus. That's like, as far as I recall, it's the only song that he mentions Christianity. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe y'all know the backstory.
Well, no, he a lot of the songs that people meme on, like with like, very like disgusting topics.
Yeah.
He believed that the demons that possessed him would be so off-put by some of his lyrics, like the one Casper song is like, oh my god. So I think like he's sort of the archetype of like the outsider musician that has clinical schizophrenia, and through that he creates something that isn't necessarily the work of art, but it's something that is related to his own complex and his own belief system. And I think, but always the danger with that type of outsider art, same with like Henry Darger, is like, are you really just exploiting a mentally ill person, or is it something that is of an intrinsic value?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how it's exploitative, because like both, I mean, well, I guess Darger like didn't publish any of his works, but so I guess you could argue like some consenting there. I mean, Wesley Willis, like he, as far as I understand, I mean, we enjoyed performing his music. He wanted people to hear it, so I don't see how you can call it exploitative.
Yeah, but, I like his rock album. He did Wesley Willis and the Fiasco.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was fantastic.
That was great.
Yeah.
Rock and Roll McDonald's, I think, is like truly a visionary song, because like that just sums up the modern world like nothing else. Like literally, like it's more valuable as a piece of art than like a million like years worth of like Twitter, like a 4chan like infographics from like 4chan Paul. Like that's Rock and Roll McDonald's. It's all you need, like really.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of forgot. I had like a big like Wesley Willis phase when I was like 14 or something, and then I like found like Bass God,
Oh god.
And like Lil B just like filled like the like Wesley Willis like niche while like being like more diverse and shit in his like musical output, and like but shouts out to Wesley Willis too.
Rock over London.
Rock over London.
Rock on Chicago. Wheaties, breakfast of champions.
My hope is that like people like that are the ones that are actually like, leading worship in New Jerusalem or something. Him and like the Human Horn or something. That's my hope.
Yeah, he's like he died like in like early 2000s, right? Rest in peace.
Yeah, he died I want to say 2007. He had some form of brain cancer, I think. Something like, he was only like 40 years old too, unfortunately.
Yeah, damn.
Yeah. And he like struggled throughout his life with homelessness, poverty, obesity, and so forth.
Yeah. At least they like renamed the Sears Tower in Chicago Willis Tower to commemorate him. They didn't actually, but I always saw that as like sort of like beautiful in that way.
We can make it that.
Yeah. In my
Did you guys
head,
ever
it is
listen to
that.
Shuby Taylor? He was the guy who would like literally just make trumpet noises.
No, I never heard of him.
Yeah, he's worth checking out. He went on some what show was that? It was that big popular show. Anyway, he like went on he went on stage. I don't know, like the 90s, and he went up there and just did like just trumpet noises for like 2 minutes, and then got booed off the stage. But he has like full albums of him just doing trumpet noises, and like one of them's like a couple of them are like worship songs, you know, they're like gospel hymns and stuff.
Whoa.
And but they're not like, I actually enjoy them. They're like funny, but they're like, I don't know, it's just like it's just like terrific to listen to. Definitely worth going on YouTube for that. And he's on Spotify too somehow. I think he just recently passed away a few years ago.
I would need to check that out.
Yeah, Shuby Taylor, the human horn. Yeah, so I made like a playlist. It was called like The Foolishness of God, and it was like all these like outsiders making like spirituals. And it's a fun one to listen to. Like Shags are obviously on there.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to check that out.
Superstar and Star is another one, and they're still performing. It's like all VHS kind of grainy like R&B stuff, and it's in that category for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking this up right now.
Yeah, I think Superstar. I think there's a guy. I don't know if you ever met this guy. He was a noise guy. Went by Ghost Ice in St. Louis, Max. But like, I think he got Superstar to come through St. Louis.
Oh, word. Yeah, I don't think I met him. Damn, I just based on like the like picture of like what these two people look like, I definitely want to check them out.
I also just want to say I'm like super impressed that this has actually gone on this far, and
yeah, where we at like 4.5 hours.
Yeah, something like that. Oh man, I actually have to go. Like oh.
Yeah, I'd be down to call it a wrap, but I mean, I don't know if people are still steaming them. I'm not gonna. But yeah, I'm about ready to fall asleep.
Yeah, I think it was a good discussion. Thanks everybody for joining, and
for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Gio, that was great. Yeah, I mean, really, a lot of you guys provide some really good insight and also fun insight. And Gio, I would definitely be checking out the podcast and stuff. I'm excited to dig in.
Oh yeah, we have great guests, great content. We actually had Ariel Pink on for 3 hours, and I highly recommend that one. That was amazing. We also had him recently to talk about the January, and he was arguing with this lib, and it was amazing. So, yeah, but we have. It was great, like, because like Ariel, he just like has a way of mogging people sometimes when he goes off. So it was amazing. But yeah, highly recommend that one. Yeah. We'd love to have you guys on too as well. That'd be great. Tomorrow we were supposed to have Jay Dyer, but he like canceled at the last minute. So we have to find we have this guy, I think his name is James Valiant, where he has this book where he claims that Jesus was a Roman psyop or something. So yeah. Like it was created by the Roman Empire to, I don't know, something, which is kind of like, I'm gonna bring up how that kind of contradicts what Gibbons said, that like, you know, the thesis of like Christianity destroyed the Roman Empire, but we'll see what happens. We'll see who we get.
Yeah, it's an interesting thesis. I'd like to hear his argument.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being too convinced by it, but I'd like to hear anything out.
It sucks that Dyer dropped, but I mean, we'll find someone good. We always have like Ortho and other people on, so we'll see what happens. And we also, I forget what big guests we have on. We recently had on Cernovich. We always have like Stick, Sex, and Hammer. I think we're having actually a Gamergate panel with Catherine D and this journalist from the New York Times, who actually wrote about it at the time. So that's gonna be fun. Yeah.
I love how you yeah, you're like yeah, I love how you guys managed to like bring all these like clashing like things and like clashing
Yeah.
stories. It's fun.
That's the whole yeah, that's the vision of BTR.
Yeah.
Like, because that's the reason that's how we started is like put Twitter schizos next to like semi-mainstream people. So yeah, it's always fun.
Yeah.
Oh man. But thank you guys. This has been amazing and we could do it again. And yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Gio, for your insight on the arts and other things.
Oh, thank you. I have a lot of friends here I recognize. So I got to drop off. It's like almost 1, and I have to get something to drink. My mouth is a desert. So God bless. God bless all of you, and goodbye. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Take care. Good night.
Take care. Thank you.
You bet. Yeah. God bless, guys. This is good. And I'll post it up, and I'll I don't know. I'll post it on Twitter soon. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.